What is poppin' YouTube? Backing in with another video. Today we're talking about these players that have gained so much value from the NFL draft. Let's get into it. Let's go. My first player that has gained so much value from the NFL draft is going to be Rhamondre Stevenson. I put out a video a few days ago talking about some good RB handcuffs, and a lot of you were saying Pierre Strong was someone that needed to be targeted because that dude is electric. I just need to tell you sickos that were telling me to put Pierre Strong in the video that I strongly disagree with you, because I think Rhamondre Stevenson is the man. We do know Bill Belichick likes to use a running back by committee in his running back room. But Rhamondre Stevenson last year took control of the room with 17 games played, 210 rushing attempts, 1,000 rushing yards, and 69 receptions. That was a little out of the ordinary for Rhamondre Stevenson. His profile said that he was an early workhorse running back that didn't have a lot of receiving upside. Well, proved us wrong last year with that 14.7 fantasy points per game. Now, if we look at the New England depth chart, based on what we've seen, so we have Rhamondre Stevenson as a starter, and then behind him, we have Ty Montgomery. I know they signed the skeleton of James Robinson. They have Pierre Strong, Kevin Harris, J.J. Taylor. Like, they have drafted a lot of guys in these late rounds. But Rhamondre Stevenson, the best thing that could have happened for him, Damian Harris is out of town, and they didn't bring in one of these veteran running backs like a Kareem Hunt or a Lenny Fournette, someone that he would have to compete with. So he is someone that I'm super excited about heading into 2023. Rhamondre Stevenson just went at the 5-4 in a Dynasty startup mock draft that I just did yesterday. I think that's great value to be getting Rhamondre Stevenson in, especially based on the fact that last year he had a great year, and this year all wheels are up for Rhamondre Stevenson with no carry competition in the backfield. All eyes are on Rhamondre Stevenson as my first player that gained a ton of value after the NFL draft. My second player that gained a ton of value after the NFL draft is Russell Wilson. We all know the terrible year Russell Wilson had last year. We're just going to put that one behind him. We're going to just call it chalk. We can address the fact that he didn't look good. He didn't look elite. Maybe Pete Carroll was the man that was making all the magic happen. Maybe he was the one that was actually letting Russ cook, even though we thought once he got rid of Pete Carroll and his old running ways that give him an offense that is opened up and Russell Wilson's going to cook. Clearly that didn't happen with his 15.8 fantasy points per game, which put him as the QB 18 on a points per game basis last season, which didn't help you in redraft and didn't help you in Dynasty. Russell Wilson is 34 years old. He will be turning 35 this year. But what are some of the benefits and the things that we can hold on to last season that makes us super excited for this year? Number one, he was QB 12 in pass attempts. So he was at 483. Russell Wilson kind of always has been in that bottom half of QB ones for pass attempts. So I think that is something that is hopefully going to change with Sean Payton taking over the helm. Last season, as much as we can bash and say it was a terrible season, Russell Wilson actually led the league in deep ball attempts with 87 deep balls, according to Player Profiler. As much as he had the number one targets of deep targets, he turned into the QB 13 in passing yards. So there's a ton of room of those incompletions that could, if some of those hit, how he could easily have been the QB 7 or QB 8 in passing yards, which then would have turned his whole points per game metrics and, of course, QB efficiency a little bit up. But since he didn't connect with those wide receivers, he just really had a bad year this last year. So how can we say things are going to improve for the Denver Broncos? I mean, we still have Cortland Sutton. We still have Tim Patrick returning from injury. We have Jerry Jeudy. They just drafted Marvin Mims in the 3rd round. As much as we're not excited about Marvin Mims, they have a ton of weapons. They still have KJ Hamler. So they still have a ton of weapons that are available to Russell Wilson to let him cook. Put Sean Payton in that offense, the mastermind. You have the tight ends. You have Greg Dulcich. They did bring in Adam Troutman. A lot to be excited about. And they have improved the offensive line. So maybe if they just give Russell a few more seconds, and we can see that his metrics, as much as we want to say that last year it didn't perform well, he did have some really good metrics that point to future success. So if he can still be a top 3 guy in deep ball attempts, if he can connect on a higher percentage of those, Russell Wilson seems like a man that gained a ton of value after the NFL draft. I would be trying to buy it. In our recent startup mock draft that we just did, Russ Wilson went at the 7-11, so all the way back at the back end of the 7th round for a guy that's going to be your QB2 that potentially has QB1 upside this year with a huge long contract. I know it was just a brutal year last year, but he did start to improve at the end of the year. So Russell Wilson is someone that I think his value did go up after the NFL draft. My third guy that gained a ton of value after the NFL draft is going to be George Pickens. There was a huge debate that was happening on Justin's page. He's over on the DLF channel with a guy. They were debating Diontae Johnson versus George Pickens. Now, Diontae Johnson is the alpha in that offense based on the fact that Diontae Johnson's been getting 140 to 150 targets per year, as much as last year was a down year for Diontae Johnson. But George Pickens had that highlight level catch that propelled his value, even though he had a pretty decent rookie year where he was averaging 9.8 fantasy points per game, 17 games played, and only 85 targets. The targets to me is what's the most concerning about about George Pickens' profile. He didn't even get to that 100 target mark as midway through the season. They did trade away Chase Claypool. So there should have been a lot more targets to be had. Now, the quarterback play was super inefficient. So I will understand when you're debating that. But George Pickens, to me, is someone that has the ability to step in to a bigger role, getting 120 to 130 targets this year with Kenny Pickett, with the offense improving. I'm pretty bullish on the Pittsburgh Steelers offense improving. I know Kenny Pickett didn't look great last year, guys, but I am excited for George Pickens. And the thing that we have to be looking for in Dynasty, especially with George Pickens, they didn't add anyone in the draft. Now, typically the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're the gems of hitting the guy on the second or third round that turns into someone that is pretty good. They didn't draft anyone this year, and Quentin Johnston is going to have an out in his contract next offseason, which is fully stepping into play their confidence in George Pickens. If we don't remember George Pickens' profile, George Pickens, if he wouldn't have torn his ACL for Georgia, honestly could have been the wide receiver one coming into his class based on his size, based on his athleticism. He had a lot of questions coming in about his character, but George Pickens, if we look at his efficiency metrics, the thing that concerned me the most last season with George Pickens was his target share, where he only had a 15.8% target share. But if we could see his target share get up into that 22 to 25% category, it's really only Pat Freiermuth, George Pickens, and Quentin Johnston for Kenny Pickett to throw to. I am super bullish on George Pickens, and I think his value went up a ton after the NFL draft. My fourth and final player that gained a ton of value after the NFL draft is going to be none other than Quentin Johnston. Now, I know Quentin Johnston is a rookie, but landing on the Chargers is a dream landing spot scenario for Quentin Johnston. Now, they have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Keenan Allen gets injured a lot. So does Mike Williams. Both of them are super productive when they are on the field. But the thing that we need to realize about Quentin Johnston, they need deep threats, and Quentin Johnston provides that. With his 6'3", 208 pounds, he does have a 4.57 40-yard dash. He is in the 60th percentile with his speed score. And I think the most impressive is he is in the 90th percent burst score, which is super exciting, with the ability to be running slants, to be getting open, because at the end of the day, if he's playing alongside Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, somehow Quentin Johnston gets in, maybe they start playing Keenan Allen a lot more in the slot. You have Quentin Johnston and Mike Williams on the outside. They're not going to be able to double team Quentin Johnston. They're going to be doubling the Keenan Allens. They're going to be doubling the Mike Williams. So having the ability for Quentin Johnston to be able to get open, which I think he'll easily be able to do in this offense, is something that is super exciting for me. If we value his 2022 season, I mean, dude had 60 receptions. He had a 21% target share on that powerful TCU offense that had Kendre Miller. I'm excited for Quentin Johnston, and I think he has a ton of value to be had. In Dynasty startups, he is gaining a ton of value. I just saw him go off at the 412 in our recent startup mock. Who are some guys that he went ahead of? I mean, he's going ahead of Jerry Jeudy. He's going ahead of Deebo Samuel. He's going ahead of Christian Watson, right behind Devontae Adams and DK Metcalf. So that's the kind of price that you're going to have to be paying up. You can look at KTC. I feel like KTC's values, especially with Quentin Johnston, are a little bit different, but I think his value went soaring after the NFL draft, after that landing spot. It's pretty clear to me that the Dynasty community is valuing Quentin Johnston over Jordan Addison. If you wouldn't already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Best free way to support the channel. Appreciate you tuning in here today. Let me know, who do you agree with? Who do you disagree with? I'll catch you here on the next one. Peace.